Hi, Lori Micah here. And this week I decided I'm going to bring back a video from about a year ago that I did with one of my all-time favorite NDEs, Peter Panagor. I still remember the very first time I heard his story. It does not get old for me. It has some very unique aspects to it, like he had telescopic vision. He could peer down into the earth and see things. He had a very extensive conversation with God. And when he decided to come back, he had by far the most unique experience in returning back to his body. So I'm going to bring this back so that you can listen to it maybe for the first time for you. But what I also love is that I was able to ask Peter a couple of questions that he had never been asked before, and he's been interviewed quite a lot. So I really hope you enjoy this one.
And as I'm in this space, that infinite darkness opens and a light pours through. And it was the most beautiful light I'd ever seen. And it was composed not only of pure white light and was oneness, it was composed also of a septillion, a quadrillion, a googolplex of little tiny photons of light, and not just visible light, but X-rays and infrareds and ultraviolets and electromagnetic spectrum way beyond what we have here in this universe. And all of these individual pieces made the whole. They were all one, and they were colored, all the different colors of the stars of that night, because I'm in timelessness too. There's no future or past here. There's only now. And this light is gigantic compared to me. And as soon as I see it, I am in love. I'm in love, most beautiful, most desirous. All I want is it. And my thought is my action. And as I think, I move toward it and it moves toward me. And I come up to the edge of it. And it's like an iridescent flow of light, like a waterfall. And it's got flow to it, it's got movement to it, and it's energized, and it's emoting all life. It's speaking to me, all life. And I want it. And so I touch it with myself. And as I touch it with myself opens and it pours into me and pulls me into it.
My guest today is Peter Panagor, who had a near death experience at the age of 20. And when I first heard his story 3 years ago, his encounter with God absolutely mesmerized me. I have never forgotten the details of it. And I read his book, and I'm not the only one who was touched by this because his videos have reached over 3 million people, and his own channel videos have reached over 1 million people. So today, if you tune in, you're going to find out exactly why this is such an amazing near death experience story. But we're not going to stop there. We are going to dive deep because I want to ask him all the questions that I have been dying to ask him since I first heard his story. So, Peter, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, Laurie, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Oh, so glad. This is going to be great. Well, why don't we start with your life before this? Because I know you had a terrible experience where you lost your sister.
Yes, when I was 14 years old, my sister ran away from home, but from our perspective, she vanished. And it left a major mark in my family life. My dad was in public life, and in order to keep from embarrassment, he ordered us not to talk about it to anyone, not to our cousins or our friends. And we weren't allowed to talk about it at home because when we talked about it at home, our mom would burst into tears. And it was between the time she left and the time I died, it was 6 years of nightly. My mom would cry herself to sleep every night, and we weren't allowed to talk about it because if we talked about it, she'd cry, and then Dad would be upset at us. So it was lonely. It was lonely, and I felt like I lost my parents in the process, along with my confidant sister. Yes, so I ran away from home too. My junior year of college,
I
I
didn't
went
know
away.
that.
Well, that's what I was doing. I went on national student exchange, And I was really, what I was doing is I was running away from home, and because I couldn't take it anymore. So I was an undergraduate at UMass Amherst in the English department, and I went to Montana State University for a semester. I ended up staying a year. That was in the back of my head anyway. My parents, well, we'll go away for a quarter and see what happens. I'm like, I am freaking out of here. And so I went out west to study Native American anthropology primarily. And I was very interested in that, but the one course that I could take conflicted with my required English class. So I took an American Sign Language class instead, which set me up for a theater tour that followed my near death experience. We went on a 24,000 mile, 64 show, 14 state theater tour, which gave me months by myself to process what happened to me. I separated myself. I'm getting ahead of myself here, but I separated myself from my theater troupe in order to figure out what the heck had happened to me because I had so radically changed. I came back an entirely different person. I looked the same, I spoke the same, but I was not the same.
Yeah, and we're going to find out why you were not the same in a minute. Well, it's an incredible near death experience. I have listened to, read, and watched lots of them. And this one has just stuck with me. So, why don't you share your near death experience in whatever way you want to share it?
Thanks, Laurie. So as I mentioned, I was an exchange student at Montana State University in Bozeman. I was on the National Ski Patrol at Bridger Bowl that year. I've been on the ski patrol since I was in high school, and I was a Boy Scout. And what I'm doing is telling you my credentials for what happened to me. I'd been backpacking since I was a kid. I spent 6 weeks or so before school started in the high peaks, Glacier National Park, Yellowstone, the Absaroki Mountains, and a few other places, Spanish Peaks. So I was an outdoor nature guy and experienced in all seasons. So when spring break rolled around, March, and it's winter up there in March, I didn't want to go home. I'm from the Boston area, and I was like, I don't want to go back to Boston and see my family. That's the last thing I wanted to do. And so I decided I was going to go have an adventure. And a bunch of my friends were going down to like Laguna Beach or Newport, California. Let's go to the beach. And I'm like, nah, I'm going to go north if I can. So I went to the outdoor club. I found a fellow who had planned a trip, a 10-day trip to British Columbia and Alberta to go snow caving, backcountry snow caving for 8 days, which is heavy packs on backcountry skis, living in snow caves, and to top it off with a 1 day ice climb. And Tim had just completed his certification as a lead climber for ice. And I'd been on rock a lot. I'm a bit of a mountain goat. At least in my youth, I was very sure-footed and very well balanced with my physical body. So mountain climbing was totally my thing. Never been ice climbing, required gear I didn't own and couldn't afford. So I rented and borrowed, and I came up short with my gear. I had one axe. I should have had two. I had a hammer, and a hammer is used for chipping the ice and putting in the ice screws and taking it out. But it also has like a bird's beak on it with a serrated end, so you can clip that thing right in the ice and lock it in there. The difference is that the first of all, the first difference is you're not supposed to do what I did, which is to climb with it, unless it's an emergency, which it wasn't. It was a planned trip. But it has a strap on the bottom so you can dangle it off your wrist and you don't drop it. But once you set it in the ice, you still have to hold on to it because the strap is on the bottom, as opposed to an ice axe, which has a strap midway up the shaft. You can set the axe in the ice and then open your hand, and the strap has a bead that slid down and so you could rest. So I had one arm that I could not rest, and this arm had a shorter swing. So if you have a stride, you're a runner and you have a runner's stride. If imagine if one leg was a full foot shorter than the other. On one side, your stride would be 1 foot shorter for every length that you went. So my climb was much slower than everybody else's. There were other teams on the ice that day. And so my reach was smaller and I had to rest a lot because of the muscle expenditure of energy because I couldn't rest my forearm. So all of that's to say, I talked Tim into letting me climb. He really wanted to climb and he was super bummed out when I couldn't come up with the full gear. And then I kind of nudged him over the edge. I can do this. I can do it. I look at me, I can do anything. And
20-year-old invincibility, right?
that's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying. So we skied. We had this fabulous trip country skiing where we got to know each other, and then we had some hike adventures, some dangers. We're in the middle. Let me set the scene here. We're in the middle of the Western Canadian Rocky Mountains, in the middle of nowhere. The population density is maybe 1.2 person per square mile, some number in that range. Um, and it's the mountains out there. And I love the American Rocky Mountains, but the American Rocky Mountains are to the Canadian Rocky Mountains as the American Rocky Mountains, as the Appalachian Mountains are to the American Rocky Mountains. The Rocky Mountains in Canada dwarf the American Rockies. Just that's an exaggeration that the American Rockies are similar to the Appalachians because their Appalachians aren't nearly as tall. But the difference between the two sets of mountains is that the Canadian mountains not only are more dangerous because they're colder, but they're bigger and they're steeper. There's a lot less erosion. There's a lot more to them. And it's also extraordinarily beautiful. It's the Icefields Parkway in Alberta is where the climb was. So we go to this climb on the Icefields Parkway. It's a world famous climb. There's about 12 teams on the ice that day. Maybe there's 10. I don't really remember. But they were all ahead of us. And we were the last team to begin our climb, which began with adrenaline because a guy fell. He yelled, falling, and he fell 25 or 40 feet. I don't really know. But he had the rope caught him. We're all like adrenaline rush, waiting to see what happened. Is he hurt? No, he's okay. He begins his climb again. So the whole morning began with this kind of jangle of emotion. And so we go up the same climb he's on. So we were like right behind him. So we begin our ascent. I'm slow. I'm so slow that halfway up the climb, we know that we're in serious trouble. And it's not like backpacking where you can turn around and go back down the trail again. Climbing is a different sport. It's you have to follow the route. You can't rappel down where you're climbing. Why is that? Because it's not set up for that, because it's dangerous to do that. It's foolhardy. So we made our climb up, and by the time we were within hours of the top, we knew that the sun was going to go down on us. And so I'm going to tell this part of the story much shorter, which is that this is like one of those movies where there's a climbing team in a dangerous situation in the Himalayas and people are freezing to death. That's what it's like. And I was terrified because we're sitting on this ledge, the sun goes down, the temperature drops 30 degrees in the snap of a fingers, a bazillion stars come out. We can see sort of in the starlight, but it's so cold so quickly that hypothermia begins instantly. All of my muscles begin to jangle independently of each other. So everything's kind of, I'm in a big twitch. I'm twitching, my jaw's twitching, my eyelids are twitching, everything's twitching on me. And I know, because I'm on the ski patrol, that we're in serious trouble, that we're going to die out here. And I tell Tim, that we're probably going to die out here. And we discuss what we're going to do, because we've got 3 pitches, which are about 150 feet down, to rappel down this mountain, and in the dark. And with the cold continuing to decline, get colder all night long. We didn't have any extra food with us because nobody did. So all of the energy that we had was the energy that we had. And that we had to expend that energy to stay warm. But as we expended that energy, it kept getting colder. And so we had to spend more energy to stay warmer. And that included even speech. So we get to this place during the night where we stopped talking, because every time I spoke, I could see my energy meter ticking down inside of me. And hypothermia, it steals reason. It steals coordination. My eyeballs, I could feel, I still have this crazy physical memory of I could feel the backs of my eyeballs because they were freezing. And I could feel my tongue was freezing, my muscle coordination. It wasn't just that I was losing coordination, which I was, it's that my muscles were freezing. They became more and more difficult to move. And all night long, this got worse. And we compartmentalized our fear. One of the great things about Tim was that he was super level-headed under great amount of stress. And me too. I was totally right there, because you panic, you die. And our reliance upon each other was built upon the week previous, and our reliance that night was hyper focused on survival. So we make these rappels and things happen and you can read about them in the book if you want to. By the time we reached the last rappel, we were in a safe place in that it had mounted straps that are epoxied on pins into the mountain with carabiners, so we could clip in and we weren't going to fall because it's the top of this practice climb, and we're off the ice at this point. We're on rock with our click clacking of our crampons. And so Tim is to my left. He's clipped in on this harness, and I'm clipped in on my harness with a strap to the mountain. I have the rope. We can hear the Saskatchewan River, which is right across the parkway, running underneath the snow, and it's extraordinarily beautiful out. There's more stars than I'd ever seen ever in my life, of so many colors I can't even describe them to you. And the moon had risen, so the moonlight was reflecting off the mountain across the river, and it was just perfectly beautiful. I had my situation at this point was I had frostbite on my fingers. I have all my digits, but I ended up with second degree. My feet had gone from feeling like they were on fire to being numb, which is a bad thing. I was super focused on exactly what I was doing and not really paying attention to Tim. I took the one end of the rope, I tied it to my harness, I took the other end, this without my mittens on, further exposing myself to the cold, tossing the rope out around this corner of this cliff. We had descended down this craggy area, and there was a turn in the mountain as we came over onto this ledge. So I came over to this ledge and I threw the rope around that, and I pulled on it, and on the first pull, it jammed somewhere up around the corner, and it was laying inside of some rocky crag, and I pulled it and it stuck, and then I pulled it and it stuck harder, and then it just became immovable. And now we couldn't go up because you can't descend without a rope in the dark with crampons on rock, which is, you could do it if you were like in the daylight with rock climbing gear, but not at night with ice climbing gear. And we couldn't go down because we didn't have a rope. And so now we're totally stuck. And it's hours and hours later, and the hypothermia is deep inside of me. And I realized that we were not going to get out of this situation. And I then had one of the final stages of hypothermia is when all of the blood feels like it rushes from your extremities to your core. And I felt all this blood rush to my core, and I got hot. And so I unzipped my coat, which is what happens to hypothermic people. They take off their clothes, and that which further exposed me to the cold and heat loss. And as I did this, I had this realization of the abandonment of my drive for survival. I had this animalistic body power of will for survival that didn't have to do with my rational mind. It had to do with something much, much deeper, much more hominid inside of me. And when I had this realization that, oh, I know what this means, even though I didn't zip back my coat back up, I still knew what it meant. I gave up. And then this peace settled over me. This acceptance settles over me. I start thinking about God. I start thinking about my family. And I begin to fall asleep. I fall asleep, collapse on the rock, stand back up, pull on the rope, fall asleep, crash on the rock, stand back up, pull on the rope, stood back up this time. And as I stood up, my peripheral vision was surrounded by a big black circle. Clear light in the middle, big black circle on the outer edges. And this tunnel vision began to collapse very rapidly. And as it collapsed, I thought to myself, what is this thing? I had never seen such a thing. And I was looking around, I was looking at Tim, I was looking at the mountain, and I was like, what the heck is this? And as it got smaller and smaller, I thought to myself, I could, because which meant is I was seeing through like a toilet paper roll or a paper towel roll. But mostly what I could see was darkness. And I had this little tiny space of light, but mostly there was just darkness. And I was thinking, am I falling asleep? This is weird. And as it went out, I thought, I must be falling asleep. But when it snapped to blackness, instead of unconsciousness, which is what had happened previously when I was falling asleep, it was instantaneous unconsciousness. This time I became conscious. It closed to darkness and I'm awake. And I'm awake and I don't know what's going on. I'm not scared. I just am a little confused. I'm like, what is this? And I feel like I'm sort of in front of myself. Like I'm sort of kind of, I don't know, in front of myself. I don't know how to describe it. And in front of me, where the mountain had been, was this vast darkness. And I remember thinking, if I'm asleep, I've fallen. But if I've fallen, why do I feel like I'm standing up? And where's the mountain gone? And in front of me, there was this deep, velvety darkness that extended the, say, size of the galaxy. Only there's nothing in it. And I can see the darkness has depth to it, which is another crazy sort of thing. And way far in the distance, this single star appears. And the single star is white, and it is a vast distance on the other side of the galaxy. And it rushes toward me across the expanse of the galaxy, this empty darkness, faster than the speed of light. And as it comes toward me, it fills my vision so that my light is all I see as it comes to me. And I don't know what's going on. And I'm thinking, what is this? And it says to me telepathically, without words. So this is because at this point, I don't have a brain because I'm outside of my body. And it says to me, you're coming with me. I'm taking you. You're mine. Something to that effect. And I thought, don't know what's going on. I'm not going anywhere. So I steeled myself and I put up my shield of my will, and it knocked my shield aside and plucked me out like I was a daisy in a field. And I had no power. I had no agency. I had no control. It took me. And then there was this experience of severing. I'd had been out of my body as a child and was connected to my body by the biblical silver cord, but that was snipped like a big pair of shears, cut it off. I was disconnected from my body and I knew it. And so no more connection to my body. And I began my transformation. I still had the shape of a human being ish, but I wasn't made of molecules. And everything I'm saying is in metaphor, and there's a ton of paradox. And so I'm made of light. I have a light form. I'm not made of molecules. And I'm inside this much larger orb of angel, light being, intelligence. And it's speaking to me. I'm in it. It's carrying me back up the direction it came, seemingly slower than it came down toward me, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, because there was some time I spent in there. And it's feeding me comfort and intelligence, vast intelligence, vast comfort. And I had this sense that it was a limited form of this unlimited that was speaking through it. So there was this superposition thing going on, or where there's not superposition, an entanglement situation where I knew that the bigger voice was speaking through this entity that had its own essence, its own beingness. So it was both this and not that. So there was a sort of superposition with it as well. It was a 0 and a 1 at the same time, but it was also just a 0, and it was also a 1. And so it's, what is that? How does that work in the quantum world? I'm inside of it. It's carrying me up and it's feeding me comfort. And I felt contentment in a way and rest and ease that I never experienced before. And I could see through it. It was transparent and it was gigantic compared to me. And I had 2 points of view. I was inside this being, seeing through it into the darkness, and I was also an eyeball outside of it, the eye of God, seeing me inside of it. But when I looked from inside, I couldn't see it, but I could see it inside myself. I could see myself from inside myself because I could see through this eye that was me, and yet it was bigger than me. So I had this entanglement thing going on, and I was superpositioned. I was this and not this at the same time, this and that at the same time. Meanwhile, this is all happening at the same time. I get carried up to edge of this velvety dark space, and pop, I'm like expelled from this angelic being, or it enfolds itself. I can't really tell. And one of the things about my near death experience and the processing that takes forever, takes, like you said, 20 years, and now I'm 40 years into it, I'm still processing it, is that I knew a whole lot more over there than I know now here. And so, and it keeps feeding me. It's the gift that keeps on giving. The more I mine it, I excavate it, the more I know. And the more I learn, the more I remember is a better way to put it. So I get popped into this vast space, and this space is, and now we're up to the universe size. The space is the size of the universe. It is huge, and I am absolutely alone in it. I am by myself, and I am an orb of consciousness. So now I've gone from being this humanoid shaped being of light, and now I'm an expanded orb myself. I'm like the angelic being. I am big, but I am contained, and my self, my personhood, was no longer connected to Peter, but my personhood, my thinking, my intelligence, my understanding, my sensory perceptions, they were all one thing. There wasn't like the nose and the eyeball and the fingertip. They were all the nose, the eyes, the fingers. That was all one thing. And the brain too, and the personality and everything else was just, I was a singular entity of metaphoric, again, energy, because I was in no thingness. There were no molecules, no electrons, no photons, nothing like that. Although I talk like there were, because I don't know how to talk about this ineffability without that. But so I'm this orb of consciousness, and I know myself. I know this is, I remember this is who I have been, who I've always been. This is my true self. How did I not know that when I was this human being, which I'm mostly forgetting now anyway, because I'm in this space of no suffering and well being and contentment. And I am alone, alone and content. I wasn't lonely. I knew myself. And as I'm in this, I can see in every direction at once, like 10,000 eyes, and I can see this vast darkness, the size of the universe, and I can see all of it because it's not only dark, it's illuminated. Like the darkness itself had its own illumination, but it's no thingness. And way far to the edges of it, there's a greater darkness. And this greater darkness is impenetrable by me. I can see, it was as if I had two James Webb telescopes for eyeballs, and I could see way back to the beginning of everything. Of course, there's nothing in there, but there was a point at which I could not see beyond. And I knew that place, that darkness was infinite. And as I'm in this space, that infinite darkness opens, and as it opens, a light pours through. And the light is, in my book, I say it's like 700 feet by 300 feet or something. The measurement had no meaning. It was way bigger than me. And it came out of the darkness, and it was the most beautiful light I'd ever seen. And it was composed not only of pure white light, it was and was oneness. It was composed also of a septillion, a quadrillion, a googolplex of little tiny photons of light, and not just visible light, but X-rays and infrareds and ultraviolets and electromagnetic spectrum, way beyond what we have here in this universe. And there were all of these individual pieces made the whole. They were all one, and they were colored, all the different colors of the stars of that night, and they were white at the same time. And it wasn't flipping from A to B, white light, colored light, them, many, one. It was all at the same time, because I'm in timelessness too. There's no future or past here. There's only now. And this light is gigantic compared to me. And as soon as I see it, I am in love. I'm in love, most beautiful, most desirous. All I want is it. And my thought is my action. And as I think, I move toward it, and it moves toward me. And I come up to the edge of it, and it's like an iridescent flow of light, like a waterfall. And it's like a fish scales and coloration and white at the same time. And it's got flow to it. It's got movement to it, and it's energized, and it's emoting all life. It is all life. There is this, and it's self-evidently so. It's speaking to me, all life. And I want it. And so I touch it with myself. And as I touch it with myself opens and it pours into me and pulls me into it. And I'm inside of it. And it has this, it's translucent. So I can see this great depth of it. It's transparent. I can see through it to this deeper, this tunnel that leads into the deep darkness. And I'm in the middle of this light, and it expands inside of me. And all of these things happen at once. So I tell it in a chronology because I've had to structure it to think about it. So I hear my name being called, not Peter. I'm hearing my soul name, unpronounceable by tongue because there's no tongues there, and it's calling my soul into being. And it's always calling my soul into being. And I have this sense of my createdness is eons and eons old and always in the now, always being called into being, breathed into being, named into being. And that creator, unlimited creator, makes me creature. And so I have this sense of immense majesty, creativity making me and telling me, I make you. And I can see myself as soul. So I have this vision of the long length of my soul existence. And while this is going on, an eye appears to me, this big, huge eye, and this big, huge, it's like a burning sun. It's like those big red stars that take 13 billion of our stars to fill our star to fill in it. It's huge and it's white and it's an eyeball and it's looking right at me. And so I was reshaped at this point back into this humanoid shape, but I was made of light, and the light was seeing all of my life, seeing every aspect of who I was, but it wasn't from the outside. It was seeing me from the inside of its own experience of me. So there was nobody, some saint up there writing in the book of life or somebody typing into the Akashic records. There was not, the divine being existed in my life simultaneously with me. And the record of this was the divine's experience of my life. And as I'm being illuminated, I have this little tiny dark space like the size of this eraser. It's white, but this is in my experience, it was black. And I knew that it was all of my shame, all of my guilt, all of my anger and my jealousies, all the things that I hid from myself after I experienced them, and things that I hid from other people. And so and for some reason it was like floated up into my shoulder for some reason, and I was trying to hide it, and I couldn't hide it from this all-seeing eye. And as soon as I became aware of it, it became aware of it, and then I was brought into it. So I had this sort of compression experience where I was funneled down into all of my dark experience. So my life review wasn't just that I understood that the divine had always been with me and loving me always. Beloved, I'm beloved in everything that I did. But as soon as I saw my own darkness, I entered into it. And then I went through this life review, very specific life review of experiencing all of the pain and suffering that I caused to every single person in my life from their interior experience of it, not just their perspective of it, but as they experienced it, I experienced it with them, as them. And simultaneous to that, I was also me, Peter, this former Peter, experiencing all of my emotions and reasons for causing them that pain. And there was this long chronology. And as I went through their pain, because the divine also in them, experiencing them, nothing exists that is not known. in the moment of its existence. And so I was in these people being shown my brother, my sister, my mother, my father, my friends, all of the pain that I caused them, and felt their pain. And it was 10,000 times greater than I thought that it was when I gave it to them. And all of that pain attached to me. I felt all of their pain and it became mine. And so I'm going through this experience where I'm suffering all of their pain. And I realized that I had actually given it to myself, and that I had the divine, who, this infinite purity, is showing me myself. And I wasn't judged. I judged myself in comparison to the divine love on offer. And so while I was going through all of this, I felt shame for my limited selfish nature, but I also understood that I didn't create me, or the whole universe, or the way human society works. I'm just a cog in a wheel, and I'm doing the thing that humans do. And I had this experience of this radical equality of humanity's brokenness. The way we mistreat each other and hurt each other was very equal in comparison to this unlimited nature of excuse me, unlimited nature of this purity of being. And that it's not just humanity who's made this way, everything is made this way. Everything on Earth and everything in our galaxy and all the galaxies and all the universe has this uniformity of less thanness from the ultimate. There's this limited nature to us. And I didn't design it. I didn't make it. I didn't write the code. I'm just a line in the code, and I am beloved. And I was beloved through all of the things that I did. Even in what I needed to do, what I ended up doing was listening to the love on offer. So all these, I see myself as radically related to all humans in my frailty. And I hear the voice inside of me, around me, speaking only love to me. I love you. I've always loved you. Come to me. Welcome. I love you as you are. And as I listened with the ear of my heart, all the love that had been given to me in my life and all the love I'd given away was this ear that I could hear the love on offer. And as I turned away from my selfish nature, my selfish attachment to the, as Jacob Marley talks about in Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, the chains I forged in life. I chained myself to myself. And that the release of these had nothing to do with me. The release of this had merely to be the acceptance of the love that was on offer to me. And so all I had to do, and this love that was on offer to me was a gigantic tidal wave, 500 feet tall, 5,000 feet tall, irresistible and self-evidently God. And all I needed to do was turn to it. And as I turned to it, all of my pain fell away. And I had this experience of expansion where I was filled with healing and wholeness, wellness, healthfulness, love, beauty, joy, understanding, knowledge. Anything I wanted to know, I could know. The paradise, bliss, awe, wonderment. And it expanded me like a helium balloon, like a dirigible, bigger and bigger, till I got to this place where I was on the edge of enfolding back into the darkness itself. And in this expanded space of paradise bliss, I have other experiences where I am a single photon, super entangled with a field of photons. And this field of photons is infinitely deep and infinitely wide and infinitely tall and infinitely uh, incomprehensible. And all of these individual photons are all entangled with each other. And even though they're all separate, they're all one. And so there's this vast them and oneness. And I am one of them, but I'm also outside. I'm not in the field. I'm close to the field, but I'm still in this other darkness, still in this heaven, in this vast space. And I know myself as being a part of the light itself. I have this unitive experience where I know I am that, and that is me. And I'm in this state of ecstasy, and my attention is drawn below this photonic self to the soul self, this lower self of me that emanates from the darkness itself. And it's got this long, it's like a long tail of eons long of the life of my soul. And there's a space during which it is just soul. And then there's all these lives inside of it. And many lives. And these lives are happening all at the same time. So they're all in existence. There's a chronology to them, and I'm super curious in my photonic self. Can I take a peek? And it flies me down, and I enter into two of these worlds inside the soul, and I enter into a human body on Earth thousands of years ago. I'm a guy. I've got hairy legs and dirty toenails because I'm looking down at my feet. I got sandals on. There's a palm tree. There's some little houses. I'm on a thoroughfare of some kind with a lot of people walking. I'm in a crowd of men. We're speaking an ancient language, which I understand. I don't know, but they're all talking, and I'm in this guy's body. And there's a spiritual conversation going on. There's a bunch of men, and they ask me a question. I'm kind of in front, and I turn to answer them, and I see them, and lots of beards and dark skin. And as I'm about to answer, I'm out. I'm pulled out, and then I'm kind of flipped back in time. I go further back down the lifeline here, and I'm inside some kind of creature that's which I think is some kind of lizardy thing. That because the eyes through which I was seeing, the world was completely different. Everything was different. The shapes were different, the colors were different, the substance of everything was different. But I had this strong sense that I was hiding from a predator in the shadows of leaves. And I had a super teeny tiny brain, and I was perfectly still. And mostly I was just looking out the eyes, feeling this fear and being completely still. And then I was pulled out again. And I then was my expanded self got to this place where there was this one more drop of this divinity this communion was going to enfold me into itself again, and I would cease to exist as a separate being. And so then I got reduced and I got reduced down again to this more human shaped thing. And I said, am I dead? And the voice, which was everything there was and inside of me, but had no mouth and I couldn't see it, said, yes, you're dead, not in language. And I say, well, what about my family? I can think of my mom and my dad and my missing sister. And as I say, what about mom and dad? They're going to lose a son, and which I was afraid there was going to break them. And was then swept across this vast universe of emptiness where I'm alone, except for the divine being is completely everything that there is there. So I'm really not alone. It is all that there is. And it sweeps me across. And I'm not this humany shaped thing now. I'm much bigger, but part of me sticks out into our universe. I'm at the edge where the energy of the divine becomes the matter of our universe. And I have like a perception. I can see our universe, and I'm kind of poked out into it, and all these quadrillion galaxies and light, and I'm in a big vast I was in a big expanse of darkness, but I was surrounded by all these galaxies. It's a very big place, and my attention is brought past all these stars and these galaxies back to where the universe is being created in the now. And I can see this vast darkness, this greater darkness, out of which this light is pouring. The beautiful light is pouring out. And as it's pouring out toward me, out of the greater darkness, it is forming like a web. And this web extends out or like a net, and it extends out, and around this net, matter is unfolded, created. And so there's light inside all of the universe, everything in it. I can see that it is made of this light that is outpouring from the greater darkness, that every star and every galaxy and every planet and every being is all woven of this light. And there is nothing that is not made of it. And And as this light is pouring out, creating the universe while I'm in it, it's all these other universes are popping out of the greater darkness, one after the other, like on different planes, one after the other. And it's this overwhelming amount of creative power. And it's all well designed. There's this intelligence that runs through everything. And this love, I'm inside of this heaven and the universe that part of me is in, and all these other universes, and the light that's pouring into all of these universes, and the darkness all become this one love. And this one love energy is all of this creativity is aimed at me like a laser beam right at me. It's focused right on me. And there's this unconditional, infinite love. And the voice says to me, in the way that I love you now, I have always loved you. And you are always well because of my love. All is well because of me. And as I have this immense experience of love isn't just heartbeat and romance, it's beauty and joy and understanding and knowledge and intelligence and mercy and charity, and it's truth. It's all these things inside of me, and I know I am welcomed, and I'm in well-being, and I am whole and healed. And as I'm in this state, it swings my vision toward our galaxy, down to our solar system, down to our Earth, and I see our Earth like a hologram. And I can see the sun, and I can see the light on the planet and the darkness, and I can see every single human being, and I can see inside of every single human being, not like looking at this one and that one and this one and that one, or like a crowd, and then I shift my vision. Everyone all at once everywhere, and inside of everyone all at once everywhere, there's this golden fleck of light, of gold. It's just this gold small fleck of light that illuminates everything. It's not just in the people, it's the light inside of everything. But I can see it in particularity inside of these people. And there's this fog over the earth, and nobody can see it. Nobody can see it. I can see it. It's like everybody's made of this light and love, and everybody is beloved, and nobody can see it. And people are doing terrible things to each other. This is life on earth as it is in live time, and people are doing beautiful things to and with each other. There's all of this going on all at the same time, the mundane and the sacred and the beautiful and the ugly. And inside of everyone, this light exists. And the voice says to me, in the way that I love you now, I have always loved you, and everyone. So there's this, I had this unique particularity of this immense, infinite, unconditional love. And I know that you're not supposed to use the word unique. It only means one. That's what it means. But everybody was uniquely loved in the same way that I am. And so everybody is known, and everyone is beloved, and nothing is ever lost, because the love loves to love itself. It is love itself, and it cannot but love itself. And so nothing is ever lost to it. It is all there is, and it is love. And then I saw my parents' faces float up from the earth, and I saw my mom and my dad live two different lives, life with me and life without me. Life with me was full of suffering. Life without me was full of tragedy and brokenness and destruction and despair. Just, this was bad. This was 100 times worse. And meanwhile, the voice is talking to me, welcome, come home, welcome, welcome, my child. And I'm seeing my parents' lives with me and without me. And then I see them in their deaths, and their death is the same. Their afterlife is the same as mine, in bliss and paradise. And because of timelessness, I know that the length of my human life, in this moment, I know that the length of my human life is a wink of my eye. And that the same is true for my parents. And that if I just wait, they'll be with me. But then all I can do is see their suffering. And I say, do I have to stay here? Can I go back there? And the voice said, you can go back there. I said, well, if I go back there, can I come back here? Can I, I don't want to lose this bliss. And the voice said, yeah, you come back here. And I say, I choose to live my life. And the voice says, you won't live your life, and throws me out. And as I get thrown out, I'm back inside this angelic being, and I'm being compressed like made mud again. Like as I'm being flown out of heaven, I see this big huge beam of white light next to me. And I kind of look back and I see that it's emanating from the darkness. I can't see into heaven anymore, but this big beam of light is coming. And I look forward, and in front of me, there are a million doorways centered on this one light, like leaves, like petals of a flower, uh, extending outward like a marigold. You know how they have all these petals? It's kind of like the marigold. And each one of the marigold petals is a doorway. And the doorway leads back to my body. And the angelic being, which is also God, says to me, choose light, choose life, a life. And I know that it wants me to choose just the light itself, but I want a life. And so I all these ideas run through my mind. I make choices, and in the moment I make these choices, I go through a door close to the light, but not in the center of the light, outside the intensity of the beam of it, but still in the radiance. And I go through this door, and I'm in this tunnel, and I go down this tunnel, and in this tunnel there are 10,000 doors, which lead to all of these other tunnels. There are all these choices I can make in my life. And I get down to the end of my tunnel, and there's a body on a cliff and another body bent over it. And I'm totally dispassionate. I'm like, what's going on here? Who's that? What's this all about? And because I don't really recognize anything. And then as I get closer to it, it carries me right to it, and it pierces the chest of the being of the man on the cliff and opens it and then stuffs me inside, painfully so. I felt like it was a slow, painful process to stick me inside because I had to be smushed even smaller and tucked into this tiny little hole, kind of like a birth canal in my chest. And I had to be stuffed back inside. And I'm inside of this dead body, and I'm still soul, and I can see through this eyeball space back at the divine, this angelic being, back toward heaven. And then it just closed, just like that. And as it closed, I was entrapped inside of this form, and I was like stuck inside of here. And then the brain started coming back on. And as the brain came back on, pain came back. And it wasn't just the pain of being hypothermic and frozen feet and frozen hands and fire and that stuff. It was just the pain of being mortal. Being in this material world was suffering on its own. And as my brain came back online, my hearing came back online, and I began to hear screaming, and began to hear noise, and then it resolved into screaming and to words, and the words were, "I don't die," and this thing I'm in is bouncing like this, and I open my eyes, and there's a face right next to mine, and he's crying, and he's talking, he don't cry, don't die, and he sees me, eyes open, he says, "I thought you were dead, you were dead, I thought you were dead, you were dead, you're gonna die, I'm gonna die," and he's yelling and screaming, and he pulls me up, and he's talking, he's all upset, and I like, what is going on here? Who is this person? Who am I? Where am I? What is this? What happened to me? How come I'm not there anymore? What is this thing? And then I came to understand where I was, and he got me to pull the rope, and I pulled the rope, and it came free in the first pull, and we descended. And because the car was right across the street, we got the tent. We self-treated for hypothermia in the tent till we warmed up enough to get in the car to turn on the heater. And I was totally wigged out. I didn't know what had happened to me. I just knew that this place here I was in was entirely different than the one I had left because everything was illuminated. I could see light inside of Tim. I could see light in the trees. I could see light in everything, but everything was made of like celluloid, black and white, thin frailty. So it had this ugliness to it of its mortality, of its mortal thingness, and yet everything was made of this divine light. And it was pretty disconcerting.
How your story has not reached over 1 billion people is beyond my comprehension. Okay, you know how you wake up from a dream and then you remember it, you might tell it a couple of times and then slowly over time you forget about it. I probably have not listened to your story since I read your book, and it stuck with me, and I didn't really remember until you were retelling it why it stuck with me so much. I am not kidding, Peter. I have probably read over 1,500 of these stories. Like I've been obsessed with near death experiences. And now I remember it's almost like I had that dream, but it's been enough time in my humanness that I forgot all of the details of what this was. I only remembered the essence and the feeling I had about it, which was like as you were telling it, I have this thing where the hair stands up in my inside my ear, and it's when I hear a tremendous truth that happens. I got goosebumps multiple times, and you have touched on at least three different things that are like things that I have been on a soapbox talking about to help people understand about their own power. Like, I feel like crying. This is just, to me, one of the most extraordinary accounts I have ever heard. And I'm sure that you get this reaction a lot also. I guess the first thing I want to, there's so many things I want to ask you. One of the things that really touched me about this is how you were over there and you have these feelings of love and you have to come back. And now you spend the rest of your like the next 20 years every single day wanting to go back. So we came here, you're on that ledge, you throw that rope and it sticks. And you can't, no matter what you do, even though you're in a weakened state, get it out. Have you wondered, or do you know on some level, did that happen to you on purpose so you could have this experience? Because I don't think it's an experience like this is by accident, because the power of that experience, when it is retold, changes people. It changes their DNA, it changes where they go with it, it changes the next thing they do. I think that this is such a powerful story. Do you think that this was divinely orchestrated by your higher self, your soul, to have this experience?
After a long time of contemplation of it, yeah. And the reason I think so is because as a child, when I was 5, and then when I was 6, and then when I was in early college, and then in later college, and in high school too, I had this series of mystical experiences that took me out of my body and brought me into this darkness where I had a an understanding of my that I wasn't my mortal self, and that a whole bunch of different understandings, and none of them really ever made sense to me. They to a degree they did, but it was only after I died that they all kind of fell in line. They all seemed to have been prep work for me, like background, so that when this thing happened to me, I could be better prepared for the shock to my psyche, for the adjustment that I had to make. And also the divine knows everything. There's all of these choices that I had coming as I went down this tunnel, and all these doors. There are all these probabilities in my life. I make choices, I make those probabilities actualities. But also, so all the people around me, they do the same thing. Everybody's got all these choices, and everybody's kind of making the future together as we go along to the choices that we make. But it's from this huge field of probability. And so I have this experience on where I live in a state of deja vu. My time is very my set into my body is pretty slippery. It shifts around a lot. I see my choice. I see the result of my choice. I see my choice frequently before I make it. I have this experience of my being with you before you turn on your camera. And I tell my wife about it. It's like, what the heck is this thing? It took me years to figure it out. And because this field of probability is all knowing. And so, was it a setup for me? I think so. Why me? I'm not 100% sure. I lived I saw many lives I had lived.
Yeah.
And I came into this life with a talent, a mystical talent. I wasn't like trying to be psychic or levitate. It's just this thing that was happening to me. It's kind of like I was born with hazel eyes. It's just I got hazel eyes. That's it. And so I think I was made this way, but I also think I have choice in this. I could have chosen not to make this climb. I could have chosen, a hundred different choices, but all of my choices seem to have led me to that place for which I was prepared.
So you shared a couple of those lifetimes. What was really fascinating to me is that you shared a lifetime where you weren't human. And I've heard lots of people say, okay, a soul is this, and a soul can only be this. So a human soul can only ever be a human. A dog soul can never only ever be a dog. And so you have this experience where you saw that you were something that wasn't human. Did you see more than one experience where you weren't? Because I personally believe we have so many different places we can go. I don't think Earth is our only place that we go to incarnate and have experiences. Did you see other ones that were non-Earth like experiences in that tale?
I'm not sure whether the lizardy thing was on Earth or not. I don't know. I don't know where I
Mm,
was. I don't know what I
mm.
was. I know what I do know because I follow science pretty heavily, especially astronomy and all that stuff that goes along with it. Uh, there's a very big universe out there, and the
Well,
chances
and
that we're
not only
alone
just
is
one
crazy.
universe, but you saw
That's right.
universes after universes after universes, like,
Yes.
that's beyond my mental
It's so much
comprehension.
bigger. It's so much bigger, and there's so much life everywhere. I don't, one of the things I don't do with my near death experience is I don't really postulate or extrapolate from it. I
What do you mean by that?
I don't I try to let the experience be my teacher. I try not to project my own beliefs or ideas on it. And part of the reason is all my beliefs were erased when I was dead. God had no religion. God had no gender. God had no anything that was in comparison to what human beings conceive of. It is so other. And all of that was erased from me. So when I and plus I was trained, part of a theological degree, at least from the school I went to, is reasoned analytical critical thinking. So my brain it was trained as a critical thinker, and so I tend not to bring to the text as I translate what's not available in the literature around it.
Okay, that's
And so I
fair
try
enough.
to do the
Yep,
same thing with my NDE. I try
yep.
not to make stuff up.
No, I
Or,
I I
you
appreciate
know,
that, and I think everybody watching it appreciates that.
so
But your perspective is so incredibly unique.
well, I've had the curse and the blessing of spending my entire life on this. I have spent I changed I was going to go to graduate school in architecture. It's going to go be in the family business with my sister and my dad and maybe build skyscrapers in Boston. That was the plan and at least the dream. But instead, this thing happened to me, and I spent my entire life in the study of it and in the practice of it. And so I've been practicing, and the reason is completely selfish. It's a selfish reason because I didn't understand what had happened to me and I needed to know. And not only did I need to know, I needed to get back there because I didn't want to be here. And so if I can't get back there, I can't take my own life. I was suicidal for decades, but I was prohibited from killing myself when I was there. You can't uncreate what I've created. You don't have the right to do that. And at least told to me, for me. And so my only option was to try to bring it here for me. And so I've spent my entire life, 40 years now, 40 plus years, integrating and in the practice of it. And I was really fortunate after my NDE to stumble across Paramahansa Yogananda and the autobiography of a yogi and Swami Sivakananda's translation of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, which is a 3,000-year-old book still in print. That's basically a how do you do it book. It's a how to practice deep liberation spirituality. I've been in pursuit of liberation, not in pursuit of anything else. And so my whole career, so not only graduate school, undergraduate storytelling, literature, writing, graduate theology, mysticism. My degrees in theology, but my practice, my examination was in mysticism. And then I became a Congregational United Church of Christ minister to hide out in the church so that I could continue my studies, which is what I did. Nobody's going to question if the minister's meditating all the time or studying ancient books. And so that's what I did. And so I've had the fortune of being able to spend my entire life in pursuit of this. And I have. I have. And not only did I learn that throughout history, there have been people like me, like us, there have been many more near death experiences now than there ever been in the history of the world. They're sort of instant mystics. And there's a problem with instant mysticism. And the problem is that one has to integrate. It's like dropping a quadruple hit of LSD and having an end of duality experience of the oneness of being, and then you're dropped back into your factory job, and you're at your factory job, and what do you do with this thing? You've had an initiation, and unless you act on this initiation, that's all you're left with. And so I got this initiation, and instead of leaving it there, I went in pursuit, and I went in pursuit because this place here was like a beautiful hellscape to me. I was in exile. I was alone. I couldn't tell anybody what had happened to me. The only thing I had was my own interior resource and the availability of data or information around me. So I went on this big, huge hunt. And what I learned, the most important thing I learned, isn't the acquisition of knowledge, it's the practice of selflessness, the practice of non attachment. And for me, energy work of Kriya Yoga. And in combination of these two things, I create I create I, an empty space inside myself for more light to enter into me. And when I came back into my body, most of me didn't come back. I'm still only this little bit of me here. I'm much bigger than this, what's tucked into this little space. But I can only access what's in this little space unless I quiet the noise of my head in order to listen without filter to the light that speaks all the time. And so I create this space. I practice this energy movement through my body to make myself a larger energy container. And I practice non-attachment to my own egoic perceptions so that I don't filter the light as much because I still have an ego.
Of
Ask anybody who
course.
knows me, right? So you can't live in the world without one, but it's the attachment to the self that's what the goal is, the practice of non-attachment. And so I think what if I were able to speak to NDEers, I would tell them that you've had this great experience. Uh, Rather than trying to figure out what happened to you, which is important, rather than just trying to figure out what happened to you, reconnect with this place, with the energy that came back with you, and don't try to use it for yourself because you are temporary. So in the Yoga Sutras, number I think it's 119, it talks about out of body experience and siddhas. And siddhas are manifestations, the capacity to manifest. Great gurus, there are many gurus who can manifest objects. This is the stories are told. Pantajali says that's cool, but it's not liberation. If you focus your attention in the world, you'll keep getting reborn. And I don't want that. I want out of here. And so my focus has been toward liberation. And I would recommend to other NDEers to find a spiritual practice that helps you liberate yourself rather than attach yourself here. And the reason for that is that the more one becomes liberated here, the more light there is inside of you, the more the light there is with you, the more it impacts the world around you.
That's so important. Wow. But I think that that's interesting because I heard a statistic that the average person who has a near death experience takes about 20 years to process it before they even tell a single soul.
Well, that's what happened to me. It was almost 20 years. It was probably exactly 20 years, pretty close to it, because I didn't want, I come from a pretty rational family. I was raised Greek Orthodox and Roman Catholic, both churches, same time. So we have faith in the family, but we're pretty critical thinking, analytical reasoning kind of people. And this is not that. I didn't have language to speak about it. I was concerned that if I did speak about it, people in my family, people closest to me, my cousins, my friends would think I was insane. And
And
so
this was when you were 20, you had this. And so I'm trying to think, did Raymond Moody even have his book out yet, Life After Life?
He
Maybe
did, but
barely.
I did barely, but I didn't know anything about it. There was no internet. I couldn't look stuff up.
No.
The closest I knew to it, because I was an English major, I knew about the transcendentalists and the romantics. Transcendentalist American, Melville, Emerson, Thoreau, Emily Dickinson, those people, and William Blake on the other side of the ocean, and other people who had these mystical tendencies in their writing, which were very plain for me to see even before this happened. And so I knew that there was this deeper spirituality that was at least in the literature. So I went on a hunt afterwards because I didn't know about Raymond Moody. I didn't read his book until probably the spring of 86. And when I read his book that was handed to me, I think my wife said to me, my brand new wife, okay, we'd just been married. She said, I had just told her about my near death experience, which kind of freaked her out. And she handed me this book and I read it. And Ken Ring, who was a near death experience researcher, he wrote the forward in it. And he was right up the road from me. I was at Yale and he was right up the road from me at UConn, University of Connecticut. So I called him up and I was like, Professor, I'm a student at Yale, and do you have 5 minutes for me? Uh, and he said,
Wow.
Yeah, I'll take 5 minutes. And so I said, Look, I'm going to tell you my little story, and I want to know if you think I'm one of these near death experiencers. So I laid out the story in 5 minutes, and he said to me, Yes, I think so. And it was like, I'm I'm not alone. It has a name.
I bet that that was so powerful to know that, because I think that there's probably back then a little part of you that's like, everybody's going to think I'm crazy. And when you find out that all these other people had it too, now you know, nobody else can tell you you're crazy because you are not alone.
And that was a real fear.
I
And
bet it
it was a
was.
real fear. I
Yep.
in my last year, the Masters of Divinity is 3 years. So in my third year, fall of my third year, I had a Kundalini awakening. I was at a scene of a card rack. I had this flash of no self where the energy erased me and it left me in a samadhi experience over 3 days where a variety of things happened. And one of the things that happened is I stopped talking at all to anyone.
You were doing silent meditation. You didn't even know it.
I and it scared my friends and my wife and my and so they talked about a committal for me to bring me to the mental hospital, and I had to explain to them that this was mysticism, that I'd had mystical experiences such as the near death experience and others, and that this was sort of a result of that. And that's what I was in grad school for anyway, studying mysticism. That's what I was doing there. I was trying to figure out what had happened to me and who I had become and who were my peers and who can understand me and what language is there and am I alone in the history of the world? And I convinced them that I was, this was what it was a mystical experience. And, but that fear of being insane, being judged insane, eh, I masked a lot. I wore a mask
I bet you
uh,
did.
of necessity.
Hmm. That's so important. Wow. All right. For the people that are watching, I know that there are a few things that people want to understand, and it helps them maybe to think a little bit differently and to create more joy and maybe to let them more of that light in. So, one of the things that I want to talk about is how you talked about God and how God was everything when you were on the other side. I had an experience like that as well, where I was on the other side and I saw source from the cosmos across the cosmos rushing towards me so fast. And I replicated that, and then I was engulfed. And in that place, I got the understanding, the download that there was nothing outside of source. So if I'm thinking of God, source, universe, everything, it was like that was a whale and there was nothing outside of the whale. Everything was inside of that. And when you were talking, it reminded me of that feeling that I had on the other side. So will you speak to that? Because the reason I think that that part is so important is because it speaks to two things. Number one, we're never separated from anything. And number two, even though we feel like we're alone here, we never really are. We're always loved, which is a really important message, I think, for humanity.
Yes, yes, and yes. And that explains why we're having this conversation. I wondered, and now I know. Well, I'm glad to meet a soul sister. Um,
Aw. Oh, you're gonna make me cry. Thank you. That's such a huge compliment.
well, takes one to know one. The One of the blessings that came back with me is the continual knowledge that all things are made out of the divine light and nothing is separate, which has well plus sides and minus sides. But one of the plus sides is that it's even though I can still be hurt, emotionally hurt, psychologically hurt, it's easier for me to understand what it is to be a frail human being and hurt another person. And therefore, forgiveness is a lot easier, which means that I don't have to carry the burden of blame or jealousy or uh, grudges. I don't have to spend energy doing that. And so one of the benefits of understanding that I am you and you are me is that I get to forgive you for being you as I forgive myself for being me. I was talking to someone today and he was asking about self-love. And he said, I'm trying to learn to love myself. And I don't really, there are days I don't really like Peter. Peter doesn't always, he's not always the best guy. I'm not in love with my human self. I'm not in love with my human self. I am in love with my original self. And the more I lean into my original self, which is what I was describing in my interior journey, the easier it is for me to understand the unity of all humanity, not just humans, but animals and plants and trees and everything on this planet, but humans in particular, humans who have this long history of strife. And I mean, look what's going on at Columbia University this week, Columbia and Yale and NYU, and how there's the violence of humanity against humanity is just pervasive. It's the Middle East, it's Israel and Palestine, it's Ukraine and Russia. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. It's in the city streets. And this divine energy doesn't make one weak. It actually makes one courageous for standing up for the unity of light, the unity of love. It doesn't turn a person into a doormat. It turns a person into someone who will stands up for injustice, stands up for the one who's wounded, stands up for those who can't stand up for themselves. And that one thing, if that one thing became a dominant thing in humanity, it would change everything. It would, because people would see the wounded person as themselves, and that would change society.
But this is so great that you're sharing this because it is through this information that's disseminated and shared that we change the collective consciousness. It doesn't take 100% of the humans incarnated on this planet. It just takes a small amount to create a collective shift. That's why this is called the Great Awakening. This is why all of these stories are coming out because these stories help people wake up to the power of themselves, but also the power of the connection that we all are.
And we can nudge. You know how if you work in the corporate world, and nudging is what happens in the corporate world.
That is
You
true.
and that's how I see us, is that we have an opportunity to nudge society. And cataclysm's coming. I'm not a prophet of doom. I live on the Gulf of Maine, and we've got southern fish here now. We've got southern fish. We have great white sharks. We never had them before. Our lobsters are moving up to Canadian waters. We've had huge storms here that we've never had. We lost roadways and houses, and there's change. The times they are a changing, to quote Bob Dylan. And now one of the only ways to change culture is when there's cataclysm, catastrophe, when people won't change unless they have to change. And here we are. here we are, tens of millions of near-death experiencers, something that's never happened in the history of the world. There have always been near-death experiencers, always, but not in the numbers and percentages that we're in now because of cardiac care, primarily.
And the ability to share them with everybody instantly, that didn't exist.
That didn't exist. And so we have a very large opportunity for the first time in the history of the world to nudge everyone towards, well, you can't make a person see, but
No.
you can lead the horse to water. You could definitely do that. There's the water, drink it if you wanna.
Right,
Um,
right. All right, well, let's talk about the power of who we are because my channel is really about empowerment. I want people to understand because when I was on the other side and I saw the power of my soul, I'm going to say something that I don't normally say publicly because I think in this space this is really important and you already referenced it. So again, it's like somebody else having an experience like this to back up what I'm about to say. I have been on the other side 18 times through my experiences. 5-MeO DMT, it's the powerful, psychedelic. And I experienced my soul, and I was shown in one of those experiences that the amount of my higher self that is in this human incarnation right now would be equal to my pinky fingernail. And you just said the same thing a few minutes ago about how it's a very small percentage. Before I had those experiences, in my human mind, what my soul is what I would have thought God was. That's how powerful
yeah.
my soul is as I've experienced it. What you shared today in your eloquent way of telling your experience, which is so ineffable, how you found the words to create the story. This is obviously you've spent a lot of time with this and you've had 40 years to do it, but you explained God, source, all that is in a way that I've never heard any other person ever explain source. So, can you just give us a little bit from your perspective, our soul, our human soul compared to source?
It's wow. It's complicated because it is also made of the same substance. So it's the same,
Like
uh,
not being able to take the water drop out of the ocean?
yeah, it's like not being able to take the water drop out of the ocean. But if I were just a water drop, it would be an ocean the size of an ocean. And only I wouldn't be a water drop, I'd be a molecule of H2O. And so the immensity of the power of the divine is incomprehensible to me. When I was there, I I wanted to, because I have an interest in cosmology, and I wanted to understand how everything worked, like the how the planets are made and what stars are and what are, well, the gases of this and the neutron of that and all this kind of stuff. I wanted to know all of it, and I had this download of all of this knowledge, biology, chemistry, which I'm terrible at, biology, chemistry, geography, astronomy, quantum, everything, but I couldn't comprehend the origin of it. I could comprehend all of the substance of it, but the origin of it was beyond my ability to understand. The result I could grasp, but the creation of it was immensely beyond my knowledge. And so the infinite divine was, the source was just so much bigger than me. And yet I am made of it. I I don't try to, I know I know I'm powerful. I don't try to use my power at all. I'm not here to try to do anything. I'm here to empty myself, to allow as much space of this could fit inside of this frail little shell, to bring as much channel. This is what I try to channel. I try to channel light. I try to channel heaven, not me, not my desires, not what I want, not, I just try to, because this thing is all there is. It is, it, like you said, it's the whale. And I love that image. That's a very biblical Jonah image, when Jonah's in the whale, the belly of the whale. That's, he's like in the belly of God. And that's what it's like. it is so much more powerful than my little tiny self. And I'm a little fingernail. But there's this rabbinic saying that the soul is like a shoe. No, the body is like a shoe and the soul is like the body. So the size of the body is the size of your shoe, and the size of your soul is the size of your body. And that your soul is kind of in your shoe, and your shoe has no idea that it's really there because it doesn't. So that's kind of the comparison for power, is that and that holds true for the divine as well. I can't describe to you infinity. It is infinite love. It's not just unconditional love. We all talk about unconditional love. It's not just unconditional love. It's infinite love. There's this quote by James Joyce from Ulysses, which is a difficult novel, but totally worth it if you can get through it. In Ulysses, love loves to love love. Love loves to love love. And that's what this is. It is love loving
I wrote
itself.
that down. Love loves to love itself. Nothing is ever lost to it. I love
that
that.
it's and that is the infinite nature of the divine being. It loves itself. So if you love yourself, why would you lose any of yourself? You don't. You love everything there is, because you are everything there is. And me in my little tiny, so I had this other experience where I experienced myself in comparison to the size of the universe. I am nothing in compared to the size of the universe. Like, I am super, 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 super small. And not only the size of the universe, but all us universe, but all time. And so I have this paradoxical self-understanding of my own illumination and material unworth. It's this weird thing where which creates this sense of freedom for me, because I know that I'm just passing through here, and I'm just a little tiny, tiny nothing in the whole show. So why not have a good time while I'm here?
Yes, yes, but you also experienced a life review. I am obsessed
I
with life reviews.
I did.
And I want to bring this back up because you're going to speak to 2 points. We're going to marry two things here. Number one, we talked about the power of source. And I think that there are a lot of people on this planet who think of the wrath of God. They think that all these things that they're doing are going to be judged harshly in a certain way. And so there's a fear around that. And you had a life review, and the only pain that seemed to be experienced was you experiencing and absorbing the pain from others. So at the same time, you might be this little teeny tiny little speck, but you have this massive, massive ripple effect that can go out across the planet, across the universe. So that's the again the paradox of all of this. So let's talk about your life review from those two aspects. Number one, how it affected you maybe after you came back when you realized what you did to others truly ripples out, and you weren't doing it to others, you were doing it to yourself.
That's the question that nobody's asked me.
I did it.
Yeah, because it totally impacted everything I do. I continue to hurt people because I'm a human being.
Next up, check out this playlist of other NDE interviews. Please like and subscribe. It really helps this channel to grow so I can bring you more content. Thank you for watching. I'm so glad you're here.